All right, YouTube, all the Hilltop hunters out there, it is opening day of archery deer season in special regulations area here in southeastern Pennsylvania. Know a bunch of you guys right now, as I'm making this video, are out deer hunting, so I hope you're seeing some deer. Man, I'm excited. I can't wait to get out. I want to do a video for everybody on sharpening knives. For whatever reason, I've always been good at sharpening knives. I think I could probably make a spoon shave if I wanted to. Learned how to do it from my grandfather actually when I was a kid. Always had my little pocket knife or my hunting knife and just constantly, you know, making an effort to get it as sharp as possible. I remember his pocket knife he would shave the hair on his arm with, and I just thought it was fascinating. So I wanted to do something here because, you know, leading up to hunting season, the preparation is as fun as the actual thing of going hunting. And I remember as a kid growing up and even now, you know, sharpening my knife, you know, to go out in the woods deer hunting, that was just a big deal, you know. It's like, oh, it's time to go hunting, I'm sharpening my knife. But the fact of the matter is that you want your knife to be sharp. Not only to get the job done easier, but believe it or not, the sharper your knife is, the safer it is for you to use. It's not going to force you to use it improperly if it's dull or if it's sharp. A dull knife is going to force you to put more pressure or use odd angles, put yourself in a position if the blade slips, it'll cut you, because, you know, a dull knife, even though dull for the task you're doing it for, is still sharp enough to cut you deeply. So anyways, I'm going to start out here, just explain some of the stuff I have here. So I got a couple diamond plates here. These are made by a company called DMT. They're Dia-Sharp plates. I have two of them here. This one is a combination plate. I don't know if you can see it on there, but it's on the edge there. One side of this is coarse and then the other side is labeled as fine. And these are like a 1/4 inch thick. And then I have this one here, if you can read it, it's labeled extra fine. And when I say extra fine, it's things like a mirror on top, but it's definitely got a cutting surface on it. And this is what I use to sharpen my knives. It doesn't matter what you have. Kind of explain the grits a little bit more as I go, but basically, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I can't get my knife sharp, or I got this stone, and it's you know, it's usually a combination of things. It's a combination of a stone that's maybe too coarse or not coarse enough for your steel or for your knife. Your knife may be so dull that it needs a new bevel on it. Or it's your technique. You're not holding a consistent angle to get that bevel and keep that blade going on the stone where it needs to be, and continually refining it as you go. This is just a block of wood. I made it, put a couple these little neodymium magnets in there, so when I sit the stone on there, it doesn't go anywhere and I can use it. Now, a lot of folks love these diamond plates. I surely do, but a lot of places will advertise their diamond plates that you can use them without any kind of oil or water or anything like that, and I'm here to tell you that is categorically untrue. You got to have some kind of lubrication on there. You don't need oil. It's really not the right thing. Water, I found, is not the right thing either, believe it or not. This right here, Simple Green, right on the plate, it makes for a great cutting oil for diamond plates. Now, the knife is my Buck Vanguard. I've had this knife for a couple years. I have a couple Vanguards actually. They're my favorite hunting knife, and believe me, I got a lot of knives. You guys that know me, you know I have a lot of knives, and of all the knives I have, I think the Vanguards are my most used knife. It's got a good profile on it, you know. I will say, even though it's my favorite knife, it's not my favorite steel. This is a stainless steel, but Buck does a really good job with the heat treat on these, and this steel ends up with a very fine grain structure, not unlike a really good high carbon steel. This is a high carbon stainless steel, but what sets them apart, this is a 420 grade steel stainless, is the heat treat, and they do a fantastic job with it because these blades can be basically sharpened into razors. So this one is it's still fairly sharp. It's not going to cut hair or anything like that. Last year I got a few deer with it out. A buddy of mine and I doubled up on some does late season in January, and it needs touched up. So that being said, if your blade is really far gone, this video is probably not for you. I'll do something later on and talk about a blade that needs to have its bevel set, or if it's damaged, needs to be taken care of. So I'm not going to be using the coarse side of the stone on this. I'm going to be using the fine and then the ultra fine, because I'm really just touching this up. If you're going to take care of your knives, and you should, because they're a tool, you want your tool to work, you should never let your knife get to the point where you have to reset the bevel. It makes a lot more work for when you have to do it. You have to remove more material from the blade, because a knife has a finite life. Eventually the blade is worn to a point where it's not practical to sharpen it anymore. This blade is hollow ground, so this will take a lot of sharpening. I mean, you know, a good knife lasts you lifetime, lasts you generations, but I'm sure all of us have seen knives that were, you know, the blade has just been honed down over the years to a point it's almost nothing there, or it's nowhere near the shape that it used to be when it was new. And you know, maybe there was some damage and it had to be reprofiled or whatever, but keep your blades sharp, touch them up regularly. You'll never get to that point. They'll last generation after generation after generation. Cutting tools are important. So let's get started. I'm going to start by wetting my stone down right here on the fine side with a little simple green. You know, you don't need a lot. It's just enough to wet the surface of the stone, spread it out. Make sure your stone's clean also. You know, if you were using it a lot, don't use a dirty stone, because the particulates and contamination on it will cause you an issue. Now, I got the stone turned a little bit towards me because it's the way I use my technique. But remember, you want to set this bevel down on the stone, or in this case this plate, the same every time. Now, what's the ideal angle that you want to hold your knife, right? So this being 90 degrees straight up and down, half of that is about 45 degrees, and then down around here is going to be 15 or 20. The key thing is that you do it the same every time. Now, the steeper your edge, you can still get a razor sharp edge with a very steep bevel, right? And that edge is going to take a lot of beating, and it's going to last a long time, but it's also going to present more cutting area to the surface that you're trying to cut. So it's not going to seem as sharp as it really is, because it's going to be such a blunt edge. But you can still refine that edge, or such a blunt bevel, but you can still refine that edge very sharp. That's why anybody that's worked in the metal industry have seen steel that is cut at 90-degree angles but still has such a sharp edge on it, you can still cut your finger. But we're not looking for that. We're looking somewhere between 15 to 20 degrees on a hunting knife. And most of them come from the factory, I think, at like 15, 18 degrees. I never cared to measure it. I just kind of got a feel for it. So lay your knife flat and then tilt it. And then tilt it until you see the edge. And it's very fine. You won't be able to see it here on the camera. But tilt it until you see the edge contact the stone or the plate. And then you're really just going to take a slice out of the stone. Now, your knife has a curve to it here, and it also has what's called a distal taper. If you notice, it gets thinner towards the tip, right? It's called a distal taper. Mine starts right about here, and it gets thinner as it goes down. So as you make this stroke, and you come along that curve, you're going to have to kind of tilt up to keep the blade, or the edge of the blade, in contact with the stone. Because if you just did this and went around it, you're not going to be able to maintain your bevel, and it's going to get real shallow up here, and you'll see you have a wide hone mark up here, and it'll shallow out as it goes down here. So if you see your honing area here is wider than it is down here, then you're not following the contour of the bevel by lifting up like that. You're just kind of doing this, and then you're going to screw the blade geometry up. So if you're starting out and you want to touch it up, I'm going to do probably 5 strokes on this side. And you can see, I don't know here in the stone, but you can see there's, you know, some swarf in there where it's picking up metal. It needs a little more of this. And then I'm going to try 5 on this side. Remember, and you're just trying to make sure that you get the bevel in there. You guys can't see it probably with the camera, but when you're doing it, you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. And just take strokes out of the stone, and make sure you follow the bevel all the way around the tip of the knife towards that distal taper, because if you don't, you're going to screw up your geometry, and the end of your knife is not going to get sharp. Where the end of your knife will be sharper than the rest of it, and it'll just be frustrating, and then you won't have any luck with your knife, and then you're going to be asking your buddies to go sharpen it for you, or you're going to get stupid and put it on some kind of grinding wheel or abrasive wheel, and that is not good. Now, I'm going to tell you, that doesn't feel very sharp to me. In fact, it feels like I didn't do anything to it at all. And the reason for that is because I only did a few strokes on it. So It's pretty hard steel, and like I said, this is a fine edge, so I'm not really taking it out. So I'm just going to go back and forth now. I'm going to go one and then one and one and one 20 or 25 times, just to kind of really just touch it up. I'm also not using a lot of pressure. You don't really have to bear down on this. Let the stone, or the diamond plate in this case, do the work for you. If you're bearing down on it, you're going to roll your edge. You're not going to be able to maintain your bevel or your angle. You're going to get yourself in trouble. You know, and I talked a little bit about doing something stupid, right? Putting it on a grinding wheel or an abrasive wheel of some sort. And, you know, there is a place for that. You know, there are guys, professional knife makers, professional hunters, whatever, and they'll sharpen their knives on a slack belt, and that's fine. But you need to understand that they're doing the same thing. They're maintaining an edge bevel, and they're using the right grits. But one of the most important things is they're being careful not to burn the temper out of their blade. You know, the steel is hardened, it goes through a quenching process and then a tempering process. And if you heat that steel up to a certain point beyond that critical temperature, the temper goes out of it and the steel becomes soft. And it's very easy to do on a very, very fine edge that's already been sharpened. So it's a technique that you need to be experienced with and be good with, or you're going to ruin your knife. You know, because once you burn the temper out of it, that's it. Unless you're going to retemper it, which you're probably not going to do. So, knives or tools, take care of them. A good knife will last you a couple of lifetimes. You know, I have one of my grandfather's pocket knives, and I don't know when the last time he sharpened it, but when I got it, it was sharp enough to shave the hair on your arm. I put it away. I'll never use it, but you know, it's just important that your tools work the way you need them to work, and knives need to be sharp. A hunting knife should be sharp enough to shave hair on your arm or easily cut through paper. You know, you're field dressing a deer, skinning it, whatever, and the last thing you want to do is have to force yourself into making the blade work for you when it doesn't want to, slipping and cutting yourself. Now you're out in the woods, wherever, you know, on your week-long deer hunting trip, and you got to go into town to get 15 stitches in your hand, and you're out of commission. So don't do that. So as I go here, I can see, you know, I can see the plate is picking up swarf from the steel. It's cutting it. It's slow though, because I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm just got my finger on the spine and my thumb on the spine so I can feel the feedback of where the edge is, because you'll feel it. And if you're off on your angles, if you pay attention, you definitely will feel it. And like I said, it really doesn't matter what stone you're using. You know, you can have an Arkansas stone, you can have, you know, one of them high-end Japanese synthetic stones, you can have a traditional water stone or diamond plate. Use the right stone for the job. And what I mean is use the right grit. So let's see what we got here. I think it should be pretty good. Yep, it's definitely picked up. You guys can probably hear that. And you know, I mean, you can feel it. It'll dig into your fingernail pretty easy. So that's all done. Let's change plates. Clean this up, dry them off. Now let's go to the fine. It's on this side. So I switched plates here, and this is a extra fine DMT die-sharp plate, and this blade's sharp, and I want to refine it a little bit more. And you know, realistically, that's good enough. A sharper knife stays sharp longer, and the reason for that is if I was able to zoom in on this edge, that edge right there, if I was able to magnify that 50, 100 times, you'd see that had a whole bunch of little micro striations and micro serrations in it, which creates more surface area. More surface area means that there's going to be more wear. So if there's more wear, it's going to dull faster. So I'm going to just buff this edge down a little bit more on the fine stone. It's going to take a little bit of metal, but it's just going to get that a little bit cleaner. One stroke, and then another stroke. And I can feel this. Like I said, you know, this stone looks like a mirror, but it's cutting. And after a few strokes here, you'll see a little bit of swarf build up in here. If you were going to get one stone to sharpen your hunting knives, if somebody said to me, hey man, you know, I just want to buy one stone, it's going to be a good all-around stone, or a diamond plate or a diamond hone or whatever, I would probably get the one that I was using prior. It's the DMT Dia-Sharp. It's got a coarse and a fine, and that'll do 99% of any knife sharpening that you want to do. But like I said, the key thing is when you sharpen a knife, you got to keep this angle going. You can't stray from that, because you'll never get your blade sharp. It'll never do what you want it to do. And then there's one last step that I do. It's going to be stropping the blade on a piece of leather that's been loaded up with some jeweler's rouge, and that's sharp. That's really sharp. I don't know if you guys can see my arm here, but it slicks the hair off like a razor blade. So again, it was sharp before, but now it's really sharp, really sharp. So clean your stone up, take care of your stuff. I don't know if these things will rust. I never let them stay wet to find out. So now, that's a sharp knife. That'll gut a deer, that'll skin a deer, it'll do several deer before you would need to touch that blade up on a steel or a strop. But I'm going to run this on a strop, and what I have this. This is a piece of vegetable tanned leather that I epoxied down onto a 2x4, and then I rubbed jeweler's rouge into the leather, and that is going to give me a final polish on this blade. And this is a different process, whereas when I was sharpening, I was going towards the edge. When you're stropping, you want to go away from the edge. And again, set your knife down, find your bevel, see where it lies, and you can see as your knife is on there. And again, you're going to have to account for the distal taper in the blade and the curvature at the drop here where the point comes down and the edge meet. So you can't just lay it like this and just hold it like that and expect to strop the blade evenly. You're not. What happens is you get to this part where it curves away, you won't have any contact with your strop. And like I said, now the strop looks like it's pretty smooth, and it's been used and abused. But this really refines the edge on a knife, and I've used it a lot. It's big. I don't know, this thing's close to 1.5 feet long, maybe a little more. But so again, you know, just start. Not a lot of pressure, but away from the blade, and at the same angle that you used. And you know, you don't want to dig in on this. You don't want to put so much pressure on it that, you know, you're indenting the leather or whatever, because what happens is the leather will roll up against the edge and you'll actually dull your knife. You just want it to glide along here. Let the polishing compound in the leather do its job, and it'll come out great. And this thing will be razor sharp. Let's see what we got. So, I mean, you can probably hear that, and I can look down at that blade, and it is super fine. And if I am just able to, you can probably hear that. I don't know if you can see it, but it is slicking the hair off of my hand like a straight razor. So that knife's done, and it's as simple as that. You know, it really doesn't take much to get a knife sharp, but it takes practice and patience. That's all I got. I hope that this helped anybody out. If you have any questions, just, you know, comment down below. Good hunting. Good luck hunting. Man, I wish I was out there today. My buddy's out in the tree right now. My phone's got some messages coming through. He's got deer coming past him, so hopefully he gets one. And that'll be it. Take care.